is Surya Nanduri. Welcome back to Startup Business Management. So far, we have introduced the concepts of startup and business. We have learned what is a startup and what is not a startup. We have also learned what business means and how business has evolved over the ages. In this session, we will introduce you to the fundamental concepts of management. Have you ever thought of this? Science and technology has evolved enough to precisely calculate where to land on the moon, but it is still uncertain about where to drill for oil and gas and how much oil precisely you'll get there. After traveling nearly 385,000 kilometers, which is roughly about quarter of a million miles, a spacecraft successfully lands on the moon precisely where scientists planned and targeted. Conversely, in an oil and gas drilling, even after reaching a depth of just about 3.85 kilometers, geoscientists and reservoir engineers might not find the oil reservoir in the expected quantity. What is the reason for this? In the case of moon landing, the moon is a stable, well studied environment with fewer variables. Once you calculate the trajectory and account for known forces, the landing spot can be predicted accurately. Whereas in the case of oil drilling, the Earth's subsurface is highly complex and variable. Factors such as rock formation, pressure, temperature, and the presence of oil and gas reserves are not uniform and can change over short distances. So, despite advances in technology, these variables make it challenging to predict with absolute precision. That is why, even after drilling the well, the geoscientists and reservoir engineers can only give a probabilistic estimate of the quantity of oil that may be there. In essence, the controlled environment of space missions is easier to handle compared to unpredictable nature of geological formation on Earth. This is the difference between predictability and unpredictability, certainty and uncertainty. Handling uncertainty is much more challenging than handling certainty. Successful businesses thrive by reducing uncertainty and creating a sense of predictability in an otherwise unpredictable world. Having said that, let's look at the definition of management to understand the role played by the management in reducing the uncertainty in a business. According to Peter Drucker, one of the best known and most widely influential thinkers and writers on the subject of management theory and practice, management is a distinct process of planning, organizing, actuating, and controlling performed to determine and accomplish stated objectives with the use of human beings and other resources. Essentially, management is about achieving goals through effective utilization of resources. Decision making is critical part of this process. To broaden our perspective and understanding about management, we can use the threefold concept of management introduced by Harbison and Myers. According to them, management can be viewed from three perspectives: management as viewed by the economist, management as viewed by the sociologist, management as viewed by the practitioner. From an economist perspective, management is one of the factors of production alongside land, labor, and capital. From a sociologist perspective, management is a system of authority. Historically, management first developed in an authoritarian philosophy with a few top individuals, typically the owners of the business or entrepreneurs of the business, determining all the actions of the rank and file. From a practitioner's perspective, managers are a separate class of people, distinct from other employees and workers. So, the increase in complexity of relationships in modern society demands that the managers become elite of brains and education. So, if you look at the third perspective, the practitioner's perspective, it called for a new breed of managers who had specific education to carry out the jobs of management. In whichever perspective one may interpret management, decision making is central to management. Every manager takes decisions almost on a day to day basis, which makes decision making a key component in the role of a manager. Managers take decisions under three decision making scenarios. One is certainty, second is risk, third is uncertainty. Certainty means that relevant parameters such as cost, capacity, and demand to an extent have known present values. In this scenario, outcomes are known and they are predictable. The second scenario, risk, is where certain parameters have probabilistic outcomes. Outcomes are uncertain, but probability can be estimated based on some available information and data. The third one is uncertainty. Outcomes are unknown, and it is not possible to assess the likelihood of various possible future events. So, probabilities in this case cannot be reliably determined. Certainty and uncertainty are at the extreme end of the decision making scenarios. So, entrepreneurs or founders have to invariably take decisions within this spectrum of decision making, which ranges from a very low risk to a very high risk. There may not be a case where it is absolutely certain or where it is 100% uncertain. So, invariably, it will be a scenario between these two extremes. Now, let's do a small exercise. As a founder, think of your business environment and reflect on the decision making scenarios for your business and compare with the situation of a manager in a large corporation. As a founder of a startup or an entrepreneur managing your own business, the decision making scenarios that you will face will be totally different from those of a manager in a typical large organization. Look at the matrix given out there and now try to place these three circles which represent three decision making scenarios: uncertainty, certainty, and risk in between. Based on the degree of each, as you may perceive them in the grid given there. As a founder or entrepreneur, you are most likely to be in the low certainty, high risk, and high uncertainty zone as far as your business is concerned. Whereas in the case of a manager whose decision making is most likely to be confined to his or her own function, the scenarios will be more towards high certainty, low risk, and low uncertainty. The challenges facing a founder or entrepreneur are totally different from that of a manager in a large corporation. Similarly, management is different from administration. Administration refers to overall determination of policies, setting of major objectives, the identification of general purposes, and laying down of broad programs and projects. Management, on the other hand, is about planning, organizing, leading, and controlling through execution. Management is different from administration by function, by nature, in process, and in hierarchy. Now, let's look at the differences in detail. First, by function. Administration is guiding and setting goals and objectives, whereas management is performing activities to achieve the objectives and reach the goals. Second, by nature, administration is decision making and setting the direction, while management is execution, that means implementing and decision making with the boundaries set by the administration, mostly the operational decisions. Then, in process, administration decides what needs to be done. Management, on the other hand, decides who will do and how things shall be done. And the final one is by hierarchy or the level. Administration is at the board level, whereas management is at all levels, right from lower management, middle management, and senior management. So, by this time, you must have realized that as a founder or an entrepreneur, the role is of managerial and not necessarily the administration. But in most cases, the founders of a startup will end up being both. That is, they will be taking care of the execution, which is the managerial role, as well as guiding the company, that is the administration. Here is a decision making framework. As a founder, you need to identify the key parameters that drive your business decisions and categorize them in the following decision making scenarios: certainty, risk, and uncertainty, which we discussed so far. Review the parameters listed below. We have listed about 15 of them. These are not necessarily exhaustive ones. You could apply some of the parameters that may be specific to your business, but the ones which are listed below are good enough to begin with. For each of the parameter, determine the decision making scenario whether it falls under certainty, risk, or uncertainty. So the second column is about categorizing the business scenario in certainty, risk, or uncertainty categories. In the third column, provide a brief justification for each of the decisions that you have made. Here are the 15 parameters. One is product launch date, second is customer demand, third is competition response, fourth is supplier reliability, fifth is financial projections, sixth is marketing strategy and its effectiveness, seventh is regulatory changes, eight is hiring key personnel, 9 is market trends, 10 is technological advancements, 11 is pricing strategy, 12 external economic factors, 13 partnerships or collaborations, 14 is product pricing, 15th is customer retention. For example, first is product launch date. On the scenario's certainty, because the date is already fixed based on production schedules and marketing campaigns. So you are almost certain that product launch will happen on the date that you have scheduled. Second is customer demand. Maybe you are in a position to estimate the demand using past sales data, but fluctuations still occur based on market trends. So there is certain element of risk in it, and hence the scenario is classified as risk. So similarly, you try to do for the other 13 parameters and find yourself where you are positioned as far as the decision making scenario is concerned. Now, down the line, when we come to strategic planning, we will take the same framework, and to address the risk or uncertainty, we will see what strategies we can deploy to address the risks.